So I finished up the Fontaine Archon story quest, and I am just over the moon. It's a funny thing because I really don't ever feel like I am the target demographic for a game like Genshin Impact. I've never really been into mobile games. Obviously, I know it's on PC and PlayStation. I certainly don't care for gacha all that much, even though I have spent my own fair share of money on characters that are based on utility and are fun to play and help me traverse the world, which is the part I love about Genshin, is the world exploration and of course the music. I'm not into anime, but yet I find myself often going back to Genshin, and it really does feel like this happy place for me because it really doesn't ask that much. For me personally, I can just turn it on, do a couple things, maybe do a daily side quest. So I was really excited when Fontaine came out because I also have this connection to my European roots. Of course, I'm Italian, an Italian American, lived in Italy as a child, and obviously I sang Western opera. My last gig was in France in 2019. It was about 7 weeks. Maintenant, je pouvais parler un peu de français parce que je faisais cette chose à la France. I worked in France, so I was really excited at the prospect of exploring a world map area based on Europe or France specifically. And what we got actually sort of blew me out of the water. I've always sort of laughed because I do feel like I'm a bit of a Genshin apologist. If people are like, oh, what are you playing? I'm like, oh, I'm playing Genshin. It's really good. The music's amazing. And then inevitably they're like, well, gotcha, that sucks. And you're like, no, there's more to it than that. But it's just funny because I just never really thought that I would find myself playing as much Genshin as I have. But it really is a great game. So you step out of Sumeru, which I enjoyed, but I wasn't as committed to. And you just see this sweeping vista, this beautiful, gigantic fountain with this one little part in the center that is for getting to the upper level of this waterfall to join an aqua bus that will take you by aqueduct through, like Venice, through the beautiful sights of Fontaine to the main city of Fontaine, or Fontaine. The way it's presented is so perfect. You look over to your left and there's these giant, like Alpy looking mountains that literally look like waves. I saw a comment that was like, the waves here, they look like waves. It's true. They look like giant waves. One of them looks like the Matterhorn, even though yes, Dragonspine is technically based off the Matterhorn. There was one that had that curve that you see. You get to the Opera Biclès, and as you're walking by, you see it, and it looks like, someone pointed out that it looked like a guillotine, and it's so true. Meanwhile, all I'm thinking about is the fact that Opera Biclès is like the Opera Comique in Paris. It's not Opera de Garnier, it's not like the type of opera that I performed, but it's a show, it's a cabaret. And you see that like 1920 steampunky turn of the century vibe in Fontaine in the way that people are dressed. They're dressed like Belle Epoque. They're dressed a little bit like 1920s, but not really. And there's this incredible amalgamation of culture and identity based on France, the Lost Generation, the Belle Epoque time period, sort of synthesized. The music's kicking in. And it just feels good. And then you dive underwater. And for the first time, I've actually enjoyed an underwater exploration aspect of a game. I normally hate underwater sections of games. I find them incredibly tedious. You have to watch your breath meter. Like, yeah, we get it. Genshin did away with that. Now all you have is this stamina meter that you don't want to run out because you probably would drown, or at the very least you would just have to stand still and wait for it to recharge. I've never tested it. And then if you're using a Fontaine character, you can literally jump out of the water like a freaking dolphin. It's amazing. There's so much to see. There's sunflowers. There's these beautiful little cottages that are against mountain cliffs and beautiful flowers and birds that are brightly colored. And that's the thing about Genshin that's always been awesome. It's so bright, and even kind of like in a place that's a little bit scary, like Inazuma, where everything feels like it's trying to kill you. The hues of purple and the dark aesthetic are still gorgeous. There's these little corners where you'll spot like an electro whatever, and it's bright purple and it feels good, and then you look at it and you're like, wow, this is like a very prickly hug, but I kind of love it. You go to a village and it feels like you're in rural Japan. It's stunning, let alone the mountains and tops of Liyue. I mean, Genshin has always excelled in the world building, and it's one of the few games I know that is based off of real places that isn't like a GTA or a Red Dead. It feels like a cartoon version or an anime version, for lack of a better word, of real world environments. It's so cool, especially for someone like me who loves to travel. That's always been amazing, and I've never had any complaints about exploring Genshin. It's always been worth the time to get every single waypoint, every single Tower of the Seven. It's great. But I've always complained that I've found the story, especially the Archon story quests, to be fairly boring. And I say that with love and respect, but I have had a hard time committing to the storylines that have occurred in this game. And I think partially is because like sometimes they just talk so much and there's very little, like, I want substance, you know, I want the stakes to feel really high, because then when something happens, like the child fight, when you build up to that child moment in Liyue, you feel that intensity and the stakes feel really high and you go for it. Or in Inazuma, where people are getting their visions taken away and you and Toma, or, you know, Toma is about to get his vision taken away and you step in and you have that conflict and then you enter into A's like meditation chamber. That's amazing high stakes, but they're like buttoned in between these long periods where nothing feels like it's happening. It's all like story building. You have to sit there and pay attention. And then like, you know, you got to sit through the dialogue, which is okay. I mean, it's fine. But like for me personally, I've always felt like the Archon story quest was very tepid and very not super serious. Not until Scaramouche, and then all that stuff was really intense with the false god becoming, you know, putting the gnosis in the thing. Nahida's great. I'm so thrilled though, because for the first time, I really feel like the Archon story quest is amazing. Right from the very start, you see Lynette looking out at the water, exclaiming that prophecy to you. And like talking about drowning and how it all returned back to the sea, and this it's like, oh, what the after you've just had this moment of conversation with these two superficial people sitting on the dock, and then Miss Brack comes out, Focalors, with this fantastic like flamenco tango ditty with castanets, and you're left there like, oh my god, this is such an interesting Archon who's not afraid to be in public, who loves to be in public, who enjoys the thrill of a show, thrill of having power. No Archon before her has been as interesting to me besides her, with Raiden Shogun being a close second, followed by Nahida, followed by Zhongli, followed by Venti. And I found myself loving every scene that she's in. You know, she just eats up the scenery. And I even love those moments where then we see the second version of her and she has that self-doubt and she's like, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of freaking out. Okay, well, let me put on my face. I love that. And I love that Nouvellette. I love this cast of characters. Linny, who is outwardly putting on a mask and making you feel like he's got everything under control. And he's a showman and he's constantly peacocking and being over the top. And then when things go badly, suddenly we see this shy, timid, worried young man. I love that. I love Nouvellette, the foil to Focalors, the power and command that he has, and that real sense of like true good, you know, not chaotic neutral, not neutral good, but like truly good. It's really apparent. It's fantastic. The interactive puzzle solving thing about having a puzzle of who killed who and who did what, and you as an avocado putting all that stuff together and trying to put those pieces of the puzzle together. I love that. It's so much fun because you have to pay attention, but you're also paying attention to something that's worth paying attention to. Finding out who was Vacher was so satisfying. My friend Tony Waldman plays Vacher. He was phenomenal. That whole scene was incredibly dark. We watched someone melt. The only other time I've seen something almost as intense as that was in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, and I won't spoil that for you because it's so good. Like, that's so fun, and fun in like a morbid way, but it's fun because it feels like the stakes are really high. From the minute that you get on to that station and you take that aqueduct and you listen to the wonderful Melusine talk about, you know, keep your hands and arms and whatever inside the vehicle and stuff, instantly the stakes are high. And that's so important for drama. Now, I know that you're going to say that the world quests are dark and you got to go looking for the dark stuff. I'm sure that's true, but you have to look at it from a casual gamer's perspective. A lot of people don't necessarily have the time to go and do the world quests or do other things. But so the Archon story might be the only thing they get. And so for the first time, it feels like the darkness is really in our face. These are the same people that made Honkai Impact 3rd, which is all sorts of dark and twisted. And now we're starting to see that not everything is great. Not everything is good in the world of Teyvat. And there's a lot of twists and turns, and I love that. It's fantastic. 10 out of 10 story, I have to say. And it's interesting too, because you take all this heavy stuff on the story and you dive underwater and you are greeted with just the most delightful place. It's incredibly beautiful. It's hospitable. It's welcoming. It's bright. Nothing is really dangerous there besides that one giant hermit crab that beat the absolute shit out of me. Otherwise, there is just such a warmth about the underwater, which is so hard to find. And then music, we're going to be talking a lot more about the music on this channel as the year goes on. But musically, this is delicious. It's lovely. The music in Fontaine is exactly what I would have wanted. You get hints of Bach, William Byrd, who was an English Renaissance composer. You get classical guitar, which, I mean, every classical guitarist watching this is like, oh my God, finally my moment. Classical guitarists don't get a lot of time in the spotlight. And yet so many of the pieces in this OST for Fontaine are in the spotlight. Fontaine Battle Theme 2, the Photon of Fluctuation variation, starts off with the guitar and ends with the guitar. The underwater music is lo-fi, mixed with this incredibly gentle and sensitive singing. It's just like one of the most peaceful ambient sounds I have ever heard. And then on top of that, you get these wonderful accordion pieces. You get jazz in Fontaine proper, the city. You get the incredible waltz with the dirge of Coppelia and the nemesis of Coppelius, based off of a true ballet written by Léo Delibes, a fantastic French composer that was also an opera composer. He composed Lakme and a bunch of others. The beginning of that piece sounds like the Turkish march by Mozart. You get a Bach cello suite at one point. And then you get fun characters like Salsa and that guy where you have to, on the cottage where you have to go and get his dogs, but you can't step on the flowers. The music is just delicious. It's divine. It's perfect. Now, do I love every piece? No, of course not. But so many of those pieces are pieces that I just want to take a bath in and just walk around, and it feels good. It feels so good. It's a really, really, really good expansion. And honestly, Fontaine is a fantastic, fantastic jumping off point for people to get interested in Genshin. Now, they're going to have to work through all of those different acts from all the other Archon story quests, but imagine the payoff of doing all of that, and then you get to Fontaine, and all of a sudden things are flipped on their head and they're a little dark. I'm so hyped for the rest of the year. Listen, we're going to be covering a lot of the music here on Genshin. Specifically, Genshin Impact related, there's going to be tons of Fontaine music chats, and I hope you'll check those out. I just wanted to come here and just give you my first impressions of 4.0 Act 1 and Act 2 story beats. I can't wait to meet the Knave. I can't wait to meet Arlecchino. Of course, you know my connection to Commedia dell'arte. Arlecchino is going to be incredible. I'm so excited to meet Arlecchino, and I hope that the story continues to move in this direction, because it's really just a knockout, home run out of the park. It's great, and I can't wait to explore more, frankly. Feel free to like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next Genshin Impact music analysis. Bye.